Welcome to On the Corner of Main Street, presented by Plaza Hotel and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Here is Plaza CEO Jonathan Jossel, Gary Vickery, and I'm your host, Lisa Melmed. Hello and good morning. It's just me and you today, Jonathan.
Good morning, Lise. Good to see you.
You too, as always. You know, can I tell you something?
Yes, please.
I went to Circa recently. It was my first time in another casino since COVID. And I went on the pool deck and there was a DJ playing, and it was the first DJ I saw in at least 11 months. And
was it a good DJ?
Oh my God. I don't even know, but I had the best time. I was there for like...
Was it Grammatic?
I do love Grammatic. I wish. I haven't seen live music. I haven't been to a club in forever, and you almost forget what it feels like. But even just being on the pool deck there with no one else around, I was like taken back to those exciting moments at a nightclub.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's been to a real nightclub in 11 months. I mean, it just doesn't exist probably anywhere in the world right now. Well, there's probably a couple of places where they're doing it, and there's probably a few underground places where they're doing them, but definitely not the way we used to know them. I don't see how it's possible in this current environment, and obviously there's all the different restrictions in America in the different states. So I mean, yeah, it's weird. It's weird to think about how it would feel to see a DJ, and when you think about like how busy they get and how packed they are and all those people together.
It's kind of a scary thought.
Well, it is now, but hopefully in a couple of months it won't be. Once you get a shot in your arm, you'll be ready to go.
Oh, we're so ready.
Where you go? First place for you, Lavo Day Club?
Absolutely, without question. That is my favorite place.
It is your favorite. I remember. Well, yeah, it's probably still open. It'll be open until summer, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's the beach club.
Where's the first place you're going?
First nightclub I'm going to? It's a good question. Got to think about that one.
You have a history of going to the...
Well, yes. So, no.
Your club boy, Johnny Vegas?
Well, when I first moved here in 2007, I was through a mutual friend. I got to play tennis with our guest today, Jason Strauss. And I'll never forget, I was 23 years old playing tennis. And he said, hey, after we're done with tennis, we're going to town tonight. You should come. And I think that was the beginning of almost every Thursday night going to town. And people think, well, you're just there to party. And yeah, there was an element of that. But I think it also gave me insight into how Vegas worked after dark in many ways, and the industry people, and what became such an important part of this town, which is obviously the industry folks, but also how nightclubs became such a critical amenity to nightclubs, the business to the hotels and casinos, the business behind the nightclubs. And for me as a 23-year-old, just to see thousands of people in the lines, and this was before like EDM DJs came along. I think that was when you moved here. There was the Tiestos and all of those guys here.
Oh, the good old days.
but I mean, back then it was, you didn't even know who the DJ was. You didn't care because you were there just to have fun. And it's obviously evolved dramatically since going to a nightclub just to have fun versus now with the DJs and the details that go into the shows and how elaborate they are. But it was a really good part of my learning curve in Vegas, and coming here as a young kid, single. It was a great experience. Great experience for me, and I owe a lot of that to Jason because he was a very hospitable host, and I think probably with his partner Noah, the two of the best operators, if not in the country, if not in the world. So we're very lucky to have him joining us to talk about this and how it became what it ultimately became here.
Today we are joined by CEO of Tao Group Hospitality, Jason Strauss. Welcome to On the Corner of Main Street.
Thank you. It's great to be back in the amazing steakhouse here at Oscar's, one of my favorite design restaurants of downtown. It's truly iconic.
It's funny, we were just talking. Hi, Jason. Nice to see you.
Good to see you, John.
We actually played pickleball together last night. He beat me.
Here at the Plaza?
Yeah.
No, we played at his place.
Yeah.
But he beat me. But anyway, we were talking about the steakhouse. You were at the grand opening of the steakhouse with the the night that the restaurant was not nearly ready to open almost 10 years ago when Sheldon Adelson was here.
Yeah.
And all of them. So thank you for coming back 10 years later almost.
Well, I've been back before again, but the opening was iconic because you did a great job with the reno, and having someone like Sheldon here who's a fan of your partner and you, and it was great to have it. And then relevant since his passing of last week, big loss for the Las Vegas community for sure. He did so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I may give a little background, Tao Group Hospitality is a leading restaurant and nightlife company that develops, owns, and operates many of the world's most recognized restaurants and entertainment venues, including Tao, Marquee, Lavo, Beauty in Essex, and so much more. So tell us, how did you get started in this industry?
Oh, it happened at a very young age. I was tasked to put together a homecoming party in high school because I was the captain of the football team, and instead of doing it at somebody's house where it usually got called in by the cops or some parents got involved and shut it down, I convinced an Irish pub owner that I was a college student.
This is back in New York.
This is back in New York City, yeah, when I was 18. And was able to network through my football contacts because I'd been playing football for a while, and had a really unbelievable turnout and charged $5 at the door, $10 at the door, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And soon after, just a lot of older nightlife people heard about it, and I started getting opportunities to market nightclubs and restaurants in high school and then in college. And then my partner, Noah, at the time, was doing the same thing in New York City, and then when he went to college at Miami University. So that was the start of it.
Where did you go to high school? Where was this?
It was, the Irish pub was in the Upper West Side of New York, and I went to school I grew up in Manhattan, but we went to a school up in the Bronx called Riverdale.
Nice.
So you were doing it on your side, and Noah was doing it on his side, and then later down the road, you guys connected.
Yeah, and actually that party that I just told you was the first time we met. He came with his friends, and that's the first time we met. And then later on, some older nightlife folks put us together, and that was how we created our partnership at a really early age when we were 18.
Wow. Yeah. So you guys, you didn't have any nightclubs then. You were just promoting parties.
Promoting, marketing, working the door, bartending, getting our hands in all sorts of different facets of it. I think that helped us, evolve the company to where it is now, because we were really there in the beginning and getting our hands dirty from the ground up, and it gave us perspective even today, Right.
I know there's a long history in between what subsequently happened, but we want to get to Vegas ultimately. So
Yep.
How did you get involved with Tao Group at that point, from where you were with Noah in New York promoting to ultimately getting into Tao Group?
Well, that happened many years later, 20 plus years later. 20 years from now, the Tao Group was just a restaurant in Midtown called Tao,
right.
And it was owned by my soon-to-be partners back then, Mark Packer and Rich Wolf, who became our partners moving forward and still today. They opened up Tao in New York City, Maine, mid Manhattan, smashing success, immediately the highest grossing restaurant in Manhattan. Noah and I had a marketing company at the time and had still dabbled in nightlife. Those guys brought us in to do marketing and New Year's Eve parties and specialty sort of bring the sizzle type parties, and it created a real bond. And then it evolved into a partnership that went on to Marquee, New York, and then eventually to come out here 16, 17 years ago to open up Tao Las Vegas. So that's the transition into Vegas.
That's right. You guys had Marquee nightclub in New York as your own nightclub. You did it separately. You did that without Tao.
No, they were involved, but it was Noah and I taking the lead.
All right, and then one day someone comes to you, and presumably Mark Packer and them, say, "We got a deal in Vegas." You were involved in finding the location.
No, the Vegas deal was interesting because at the time Marquee nightclub was by far the hottest nightclub in the country. New York was booming. The economy was booming in New York, and that club was just on fire. Right. So we had gotten a lot of, and the nightlife culture in Vegas was just taking on. Light Group and Light had opened up at the Bellagio, and had done very well. And there was new nightclubs opening up at Treasure Island. I forget what that was called. And they were doing big numbers.
Tangerine.
And I think Tangerine, and I think Pure was on its way or had opened already. Anyway, a lot of casinos realized the power of nightlife and the draw and what kind of market share that brought to their casino and the volume and, you know, the amenity to a property. So we were getting approached by all sorts of different casino operators. The Hard Rock at the time with Peter Morton, Steve Wynn made an aggressive play because he was building his first tower, Wynn. And then MGM. And at the same time, our friends and partners in New York, Mark and Rich, had gotten a great offer at the Venetian to take the lease there. They had already signed it. And as they were really finding out about their space, they found out that they recognized that there was 12,000 square feet above what was a WB restaurant. It was a Mickey Mouse Donald Duck restaurant at the time. It was WB, where you'd go with your family and take a picture with Donald Duck and have a hamburger. So when they realized there was this extra space, they said, let's bring Marquee to Vegas. Let's do both. And Noah and I really looked at all these offers, and we went with the Venetian because we trusted Mark and Rich. We didn't know these other guys as well. There was a comfort level. And then also we just thought that the Venetian had all this great weekday business because we kept showing up on the weekdays because we worked the weekends in Vegas, in New York City. And so when we saw the casino so busy with convention people, and then we'd go to like the Hard Rock on a Wednesday, like we just recognized that there would be so much weekday business and corporate event business. So we saw that early, like that, did the deal there. And although the original game plan was to do a Marquee and a Tao in the Venetian, we quickly pivoted and just made it an overall Tao nightclub and restaurant, and we opened that up 16 years ago.
It was like 2006?
Yeah.
So you mentioned Light was here, there was a few others potentially, but for people that weren't here, including myself, I came in 2007. What was the scene like here? You show up, you don't know really anyone in Vegas, and you're building a company from scratch, essentially. What was the scene like? Did people know what you were trying to bring here, other than the fact that Light was already sort of?
Well, we had helped out with Light. We knew the ownership there, and we actually had a small ownership in Light because we had been partners with Andrew Sassoon beforehand in our first nightclub in the Hamptons. But that's a whole other podcast. Yeah. So we knew about Vegas. We weren't really dramatically involved. We helped with the opening, we helped with some marketing, and we had invested with Andrew to open up the first Light. So we knew a little bit about Vegas, but to say we were experts is not the case at all. So when we came out here, made the commitment to do the Venetian with Tao and really partner up and do that, we thought I think you walk into Vegas thinking you're New York, you're big shot, and this is a town that should respect a town like New York. But we were immediately humbled to recognize that nobody gave two cents. So we quickly had to navigate very quickly. A quick story I remember, we couldn't convince any cocktail waitresses to work for us at Town Nightclub.
Wow.
Could not convince anyone. At the time, Steve Wynn had just opened up his nightclub, and Lebet, I think, was what was the old Tryst.
Le Rev wasn't that?
No, I think it was called Lebet.
Okay.
Lebet.
Yeah, you would know.
And then it turned into Tryst, and then I think now is Intrigue. So at the time, Steve Wynn had opened it, and it had not done well. So the word on the street was, if Steve Wynn can't make his nightclub work,
Right.
Later on it turned into Tryst and did very well with new management. But at the time, so they're like, what is 4 New Yorkers that have never lived here going to do? So we literally couldn't get anyone to work for us. And my partner at the time, Andrew Goldberg, was out here helping me open up. He was a big part of opening up the first Tao. And we literally had no one show up at the job fair. And we just looked at each other like, what the hell are we going to do? The guys in New York are going to think our partners in New York, I think we're not doing anything. It's a disaster. And we literally went to casino food courts and approached attractive women. And it was, we tried to be as less creepy as possible and said, hey, would you like to come to a job fair? We have this. And people that had no interest and staff, that it ranged from busboys to waitresses to even management. We kind of got from food courts and from the most odd places, pieced this thing together. Thank God we had really good management that we got from other places, and they really cultivated a culture from the word go, and we were able to be successful. But that's where it really started.
That's
it was
insane.
that low of a beginning.
Ground
And
hand-to-hand combat. I mean, that's incredible because when I arrived in '07, the place was booming, and for me it was like the staple Thursday night. It was busy every night. But was there a moment in that time frame between what you just described and?
let me interrupt you. That Thursday night that you mentioned, I think we raise our flag. It's probably the longest, it's probably the longest running Thursday night party at one venue, probably in the United States.
Wow.
Before COVID, it was still doing 2,500 people every Thursday, 16 years later.
Worship Thursdays.
It was based around catering to the industry that wasn't working on the weekends, but it really became its own thing, and super proud of creating that from scratch, and was still going strong. And we intend to bring it back with full with full power as soon as the regulations loosen up.
Was there a moment, though, where you sort of went into town, you're like, wow, we've done this, it's happened? Like, did you look around and see the lines to get in, which there always was, and the crowds and the people? Like, because it must have gone pretty quick from nothing, like you just described, to being the coolest place basically in the city at some point.
Yeah, I mean, the expectation for it financially was XYZ, and that would have been a real hit for us. Right. And by the 6 months, we were doing 7 times that.
So it took 6 months.
And it just kept building and building. And at that point, I was supposed to go home back to New York. I was only supposed to be there for 3 months. And I called my partners. I'm like, I need help out here. I need more office space. You need to fly out my younger brother, who's a great operator, who's working with us in New York. And you need to fly out this person, that person. We have a real thing here. And I ended up staying. And I think it was probably within 6 months, we really sat back and we were wowed. But, to be fair, the concept was great, the execution was great, and we're super proud of that. But I have to give credit to the city. The city, it was just great timing. Right. The city was just booming. And there was only 2 or 3 other venues doing what we were doing. So the landscape was much less competitive as it is now. Right. And as you said, like on a normal Friday and Saturday night, we were shutting down the doors at midnight, and there was 800 people in the Grand Hall of Venetian waiting to get in. Yeah. And that's how crazy it was back then.
Yeah, how do you create that hype? And why do so many people wait in line? And
I mean, I think we had a really great offering where it was almost full. It was like one-stop shop. You could go there early, have a great cocktail in the lounge, have this amazing meal on a really established menu that Tao had, and then go up to the nightclub. And instead, people were like lounging here, going to dinner there, running here. And to make it all sort of seamless in a synergy was a really unique offering. And I think we just did a really good job marketing it, putting it really relevant events, relevant DJs, keeping the service obviously at a level that was, we thought, unmatched at the time. And I think that all just became a perfect storm.
Service in a nightclub is a big deal.
Especially in Vegas.
Yeah.
I think the standard here is probably highest than anywhere in the world. You go to some of these vacation spots, Mykonos, Ibiza, and they know that the guest is there for a weekend and they don't see them for a year. Right. So whether you get that service points and you get really that specialty gracious hospitality, they don't care. In Vegas, you have to do that or you die because it's so competitive, and this town is built on that gracious hospitality.
I think, Lisa, one thing that is important, though, is you took basically a fun nightclub and you brought it to Sin City, where people had this idea of Sin City, but there was never nightclubs here en masse. So now all of a sudden you had this town with real parties, and the way that Vegas was portrayed. I was just watching the Tiger Woods documentary. Have you seen it?
I saw the first one, and
the second one is about Vegas.
Right.
And
that he would come to Vegas.
All of a sudden, there's this buzz, and they show the overview of Vegas. Plaza gets a nice mention, actually, in the logo.
Yeah, I saw that.
But the idea is that Vegas is like portrayed as a place to go party, forget your worries, but it really wasn't a party place. There was some lounges, there was Rum Jungle and some other ultra lounges, but all of a sudden you got these proper nightclubs, and social media was just beginning, so it was actually like a perfect storm. Plus,
and MySpace was just starting to be like a factor. And you're right. I mean, I think you're maybe not giving that timing as much credit. There was 3 or 4 nightclubs, and there was that kind of nightlife, but nowhere near what you see now. and know where Vegas is recognized. And I have to say, us and some of those early other operators in casinos had a lot to do with setting the tone to building that runway to make Vegas the nightlife capital of the world, which it certainly was pre-COVID.
Right.
There was the host in the Tiger documentary. So what is the role of a host in a nightclub versus a casino host?
You know, where the casino host is trying to procure guests on the gaming front, where they're creating programs and content and hospitality around getting you to the property to game. Our hosts in the nightclubs are doing the same thing, but they're bringing the guests in to buy bottle service and to make table reservations. Mm-hmm. So it's just they're selling a different product. Mm-hmm. And I think the personality has to be a little different from somebody that's on a casino floor to somebody that's in a nightclub till 2 a.m. or so. So that's the main difference.
I'm assuming they work closely together. When like a big player comes in, they tell the nightclub.
We try to create that synergy. Some casinos are more open to that than others, but generally, yeah, that's the hope. That the big win is when you show a great guest that spends a lot of money that he can have an unbelievable experience again seamlessly when he's gambling or partying in a nightclub. That's the big win. But trying to get that all coordinated is not as easy as it sounds.
Mm-hmm. What is the most you've seen someone spend in a nightclub?
I mean, I won't talk about my nightclubs, but in another nightclub I saw, I've seen, 50, 100,000, even a couple 100,000 on a table in other nightclubs on one night. Yeah, I mean, some people are like, that's crazy, that makes no sense. But, that kind of spend comes with 30, 40 people, a huge entourage, a whole section. So in nightclubs in Vegas, not at mine, I've seen big.
You don't have to disclose the customers.
I don't.
Just say
no, I don't think we like to talk about what happens in our venues. Right. But that kind of spending has happened, and you see that same spending in Europe and in Dubai and other markets where people come there sort of with a vacation mentality to really entertain their entourage guests or business contacts and so forth.
So I've known you almost 15 years now, and you've done some amazing things in this town, but I'm probably most, not proud, I guess, but impressed by your Harvard Business School contribution.
Okay,
and the way you've been able to, what have you been teaching? Not teaching, but doing I guess it is teaching, a course there. What is the psychology of the business that goes behind somebody spending that kind of money in a nightclub?
Well, you just pivoted from Harvard to back to the client.
Well, because they're connected, aren't they?
I think I think there's creating the right atmosphere and hype and desire. Right. That is the place to do, and that is the place to be. And when that happens, when you create the right experience where the word of mouth travels, that's where it translates to these spenders that you are talking about. When they hear about it through multiple people, now through social media, but back then it was mostly word of mouth. Now it's, you go on social media and see who's there, what people are talking about. And when that happens, that's when you attract those type of guests that come in and really want to be a part of what they've been hearing about. And it's creating the buzz. And it's a some people say it's a talent, sometimes it's lucky, sometimes it's multifaceted, but that's what really drives those guests.
So Rich wants to know, what is the balance between fun and business? For you specifically, you're in the business of having other people have fun, but is there a danger that sometimes you can get wrapped up in that?
Yeah, I mean, my partner and myself have been pretty lucky. We've stayed pretty grounded. I think that has to do with our family. Both of our families grew up in Manhattan, and we had strong family ties, and I think a lot of credit goes there. But I've seen a lot of people in this business just get caught up in the late nights, the alcohol, the energy of these nights, and kind of the access it gives you, and people get caught up. We've had some people really. Go off that proper moral compass. But luckily, I think for us, my partner and I have always kept each other in check, and we've remained pretty grounded and found a balance between it both. A lot of people are like, you have the best job. You go to the nightclubs and the restaurants every night, and you have this great job. But for us, that's our work.
Mm-hmm.
So I could say, "Oh, you have such a great time going to your office, right?" And they say, "No, I don't." Well, that's my office.
What do you do for fun then? If the
I mean,
nightclub's your work.
I play a lot of pickleball with John, especially during COVID. We picked up pickleball, which has been a great escape from it all. But listen, I think it's it's just finding the balance. It's finding good exercise. Meditation was a big move for me about 10 years ago. I picked up TM meditation, and doing that twice a day has helped me sort of just stay calm and set back some of the stresses that come from a business.
I will tell you, Rich, in the early days when I first met Jason, I was always impressed because he'd be in the club, but always looking at the lighting, the sound, the different environments that people were experiencing and creating. I mean, he never sort of lost it in that regard.
I always said we managed the party, we weren't in the party.
That's pretty well said.
We weren't in the party.
So you mentioned Venetian in Palazzo. What do you think, if anything, will be the loss of Sheldon to the property that you're in?
I mean,
you have Lavo there as well.
We have Lavo there, and we were partners with Sheldon in Singapore, where him and Rob Goldstein and his CFO Patrick Dumont, we did a great deal with them to do 4 venues there. And it took a long time. It was a 4-year courting process, not only with them to convince them, but also the Singaporean government, who's highly involved in that property. And we ended up opening everything, pre-COVID, and we were on full blast. Everything that we had worked for was worth it. All properties. We have a Lavo there on the famous roof deck of Marina Bay Sands. We have an Avenue Lounge, which we have in New York and LA. And then we opened up a new concept, a Japanese concept, sort of our high-end version of maybe say a Nobu for people that want to just make reference. But I think we did a better job.
A high-end version.
Well, it's more. I think it's got a little bit more of a sophistication. We had to go to the market like Singapore, which is very, very hypersensitive to details, high-end service, and especially Japanese.
Right.
Especially coming from an American company.
Yeah.
So we really had to over-deliver, and that Koma Japanese restaurant is doing fantastic, even now with the restrictions in Singapore, which are much better than here because they've locked down the country there, and their numbers are better. But that is the highest grossing, or one of the top 2 highest grossing restaurants in Marina Bay Sands. So that became great. And then we opened up a mega marquee nightclub there, which is the biggest nightclub in Southeast Asia. It is over the top. It has a Ferris wheel in it. It has a 20-foot slide that you go to the 3rd mezzanine and slide down to the dance floor. An LED screen that is bigger than anything in Vegas.
That just opened 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Not even.
I mean, not even 2 years ago.
Wow.
So how has COVID affected all these nightclubs and all your...
I mean, we're in a lot of markets. We're in Chicago. We're in New York. We're in LA. We're obviously in Vegas. We're in Sydney, Australia. We're in Singapore. Some of the markets like Vegas have been much more thoughtful in how to manage that kind of an industry than the nightlife industry. And they let us open since July as a lounge with no general admission, a limited amount of people at each table, and proper separation, and all highly regulated guidelines from the governor, and then gaming. So we've been able to still stay open and keep our team members and staff still working, which to me is a massive win. But then there's markets like Chicago and New York where that's just not allowed, and we've been closed for a very long time. And
the nightclubs and the restaurants.
The LA now, everything is closed. For a while we had a stint in LA where we could do outside dining, but LA and California just seem to have the strictest guidelines where they're not even letting outside. So all of our venues are closed there. In New York, we're allowed to have outside dining, but difficult when it's, freezing cold in New York. We just built a massive outside sort of pavilion in meatpacking in New York for downtown. No, and we can do it outside.
Okay.
So that is so we're pivoting really quickly in New York to still maintain the outside dining and keep our team working and keep the brand out there and keep our guests in New York part of the Tao experience. So that will happen. That will happen any minute. It's already built. I think we're opening it this weekend.
Nice.
In Vegas, though, everything's open, just with all the restrictions that
with
are
all
in
the
place
restrictions
right
that
now.
everyone knows about, 4 people per table and 25% occupancy.
And before COVID in Vegas, there was a lot of talk that nightclubs had peaked in terms of, I guess, in terms of the expense of the DJs and all of that stuff. Where did you see the industry going pre-COVID? And you guys obviously had to adapt to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was, I think outsiders see, oh yeah, the nightlife business is hitting a peak. I think it was hitting a peak just because so many big investments in each of these casinos came, and the clubs were getting bigger and bigger with expansive budgets. I mean, I think the last 2 big nightclubs last 3 nightclubs cost $100 million to build.
Right.
None of which we were involved with, but
Right.
So the market share just got really competitive. And I think like any competitive market, when everything's happening on a strip, you just have to adapt and pivot and be really in touch day to day with what's happening on the street. Luckily, we're all on one street, so we know what everyone's doing every day.
Right.
It's not like other markets where, you're like maybe a month later you have to catch up on some nuance in any industry. Here, we're all on one street. We all know, like if someone comes up with a nuance, we all know about it and then decide if we want to jump on the bandwagon or not.
What's an example of some nuances?
I mean, just, the latest in technology with lights and sound, the latest in how to create content for each of the nights, whether it's music, whether it's what type of music, what kind of performances, what kind of DJs. Everything's a moving, fluid type of situation, especially now with social media, especially now with these this younger demographic, and they have so much access to what's new, and they're so easily taken by a trend so quickly. It's not like the old days, like something was relevant and it stayed relevant for a while. I think here, with everything from, again, a TikTok, which I'm not on and don't really understand, to an Instagram and to other things, the 21 to 30-year-old market just is so quick to find a new trend or something new that they like. So we as a group have to be on the cusp of that every single week. And that's a challenge for us that we have to continue to fight for.
Well, was there a danger that the nightclubs became more of an amenity for the hotel casinos as opposed to a business in and of themselves, which is why they were paying so much in marketing and entertainment? We were talking to Ross Marlison from Absinthe, and he was saying how really the show started struggling back many years ago, because nightclubs became shows essentially.
Yeah.
Everyone had their phones out taking video, and there was way more going on than just a DJ. There was shows almost in the nightclubs. So was there a point when it just became like these nightclubs became almost amenities as opposed to businesses?
I think because they became such a part of the Vegas culture, nightlife did, that every casino realized that they had to have that as an amenity or an experience to keep their ADRs up, to create the people through their casino floor. I think all casinos started recognizing that they needed a nightlife component. And then the challenge for the casino operators or the nightclub operators or the nightlife operators was, how do we make it profitable when we have so much competition and everyone has to buy their own market share? So that became the challenge. I think everyone recognized they needed to have it, and then the challenge was, how do you make it profitable? And some of these venues are just not profitable, and they're just loss leaders for the casino. And some of them, for us, we're not owned by the casinos. Some of our properties are managed, like Marquee at Cosmo, but we are beholden to our own P&Ls, and we have to be profitable. So that's the challenge that we fight for every day, and we've been luckily very successful with it.
So what do you think about bringing nightclubs downtown?
Well, listen, I think I've always been a huge fan of downtown. I think the potential here is amazing. There's such culture and history and just a complete wow and an authenticity wow. I think it's you come down here, you feel the authenticity. And John and I have been trying to figure out stuff down here for years. And I think when you look down at East Fremont, where the new bars that have happened there's a new nightclub that opened up there. The bars there are becoming more sophisticated, and they're appealing to a more, I would say, hipper crowd, or a crowd that understands nightlife and hospitality more than in the past. So that's a really good start. And then you see cool designs and experiential content like at Ferguson down further on Fremont. That's a really good indication that things are going in that direction. So I think there'll be more of that here. And even with Circa, I understand that they spent a lot of money and energy doing a high-end cocktail lounge on their roof, and they're doing bottle service at their pool while showing games, and that's all really good sign. And being successful, I've heard. I haven't been yet, but that's a really good sign that all the trends are moving that way for downtown.
Yeah, I don't know. You'll see like a nightclub in the hotels down here, but the areas Jason's referring to, there's pretty lively bars in East Fremont now, in the Arts District. And I think the flip side of that is when people like Jason and others that we talk with have started to show an interest in downtown. They always used to be on the Strip and only go out on the Strip, but now they want to come downtown and hang out down here. It shows that there's so much progress down here. I ran into Jason on Sunday at the Vegas Test Kitchen down in East Fremont. I mean, there's cool things happening down here that
Absolutely.
don't have to be nightclubs, but are still bringing in an audience from the Strip that want to come down here. But I don't see the nightclub model in the hotel casinos here.
I think there might be a version of it, John, but you're right. I think it's a little ways away, and I'm glad you mentioned Arts District, because this downtown area that we're in now is going to have its place, and it's always going to evolve. But that Arts District in between here and the Strip is a really interesting neighborhood, I think, because it's becoming a walkable area, and that's really unique to Vegas. You don't really get a lot of that in many cities, like, maybe in LA and Venice, or, Venice, California, Venice Beach, or maybe in New York, Soho. Every city has these walkable areas, but Vegas really didn't. And now this Arts District, I think, is becoming that. You can go there and do antique shopping, and then run into an art gallery, and then go to two great coffee houses, which are probably best in class in Vegas. And then you can stumble into Esther's Kitchen, where you can get, some of the best California style Italian. And now there's Good Pie, which is, again, arguably one of the best slice shops. All this stuff is happening down there, and it's walkable. And more you see people biking in the area. When did you see people bike in an area in Vegas?
Never.
So that to me shows that there's something really special happening there, and I would keep my eye on that area.
I agree with you. So in terms of Tao Group in Vegas, obviously the big thing right now is the Sphere.
Yeah, well, in April, Madison Square Garden, which is our parent company, split the company. Took the sports team into one division and one company called Madison Square Garden Sports, and then did another company, Madison Square Garden Entertainment, which includes a lot of their other entertainment assets, and then Tao Group. And one of their biggest initiatives for Madison Square Garden Entertainment is this massive, ambitious, amazing, game-changing arena being built on Sands right behind the Venetian, which is... Right now, the working name is MSG Sphere. I think that might be the name. Might change, who knows? But it's going to be really mind-blowing and a real game changer as far as experience and arena and unique content shows and live music. And I think the vision that our chairman and our company has for it is just mind-blowing. And I think once we open that, you'll see spheres all over the world, years down the line, because it's such an appropriate game plan and such the next evolution with arenas and experiences.
Will the Sphere be integrated with Venetian in terms of walkability?
Yes, they're creating a connection between the two properties through the conventions hall. I mean, you can pretty much figure that out by just driving by it. And they're working. It's in partnership with the Venetian, and I think not only is it a great thing for the Venetian, because it just adds this complete you can't recreate that in any way amenity for that property, but it's such an amazing thing for Vegas.
There's no sports team scheduled for there, though.
No sports, but I believe there will be no sports teams, but I think there's going to be optionality with different types of athletics, maybe boxing and UFC, but that's all to be announced, and I think to be figured out. But the way it's designed and the thought that goes into the unique sound and the way the sight lines are, we can't have like a basketball team.
Right. I guess we did miss a critical part of your journey and the story in that Madison Square Garden bought Tao Group. It's probably another whole different podcast as well.
Yeah.
But that is critical in terms of where you are today and your growth plan.
Yes, correct.
In the future for Vegas, anything else that's new coming up other than getting back to business, which we're all trying to do, getting past the governor regulations? And
I think you just said it. I think our big focus right now is to keep the executive team and the people that have been with us since a lot of our line staff and heart of house, we call it. Now we don't call it back of house, we call it the heart of house.
I like that.
They've been, some of them have been with us since inception, and the goal right now is just to keep these companies and these venues open and keep them running, and then hopefully when we get back to 50%, hopefully the governor sees that as something we can do, and then eventually back to where we were. The goal is just to get back to normal, and after we get there, I think we'll look forward. But that's what's immediate, and that's a major priority.
The Roaring 20s are coming.
I hope so. I hope you're right. I believe you're right. And listen, we see the demand. For New Year's is a great example. We had limited occupancy, we had limited capabilities, but the demand to come to the venues in Vegas was so way ahead of last year. Just to give you perspective. So
yeah,
I agree with you. The demand is there. We just got to have the ability to bring everybody back safely.
I think it's not just the demand in terms of coming here, but it's in terms of experiencing, spending money. We saw New Year's Eve, some of the best business we've seen in years, just from a limited group, but they were just desperate to be here and having fun. Even in the limited capacity that Fremont Street was shut down, people just wanted to have fun.
Yeah, you guys were slammed down here. You saw the demand, and just an interesting stat. Like, we would look at reservations and call-ins 2 weeks before New Year's, year over year. Mm-hmm. And this year was 25% more demand. Yeah. So obviously we couldn't accommodate it because of the restrictions, but that shows you the type of almost deal flow that was happening.
You guys are gonna be slammed. And in the meantime, you guys have the best little plug here, but to go sushi box from Tao, you can order on Uber.
Thank you. Yes, please get the word out about that.
Best sushi deal in town. You haven't tried it yet, Lisa.
I haven't tried, but I saw your picture of it. It looks incredible.
It's a great deal. It's great value, and the experience is excellent. So I highly recommend it. Until you can get back to going to restaurants, full board. I definitely.
Yeah, delivery was not a big priority for us, obviously, during before COVID, right? And now we had a little bit of an innovation group, and we created this box. We saw that it worked for some smaller hospitality guys out in LA, and we did our own version of it, and the feedback on it, not only as an aesthetic, but as a price point and an experience, as you just said, has been pretty amazing. So if anyone's looking to stay at home during the week and get some sushi, please check it out. Thanks for mentioning it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It was so interesting to learn more about you, and we can't wait to see what the future holds.
Thank you. Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You can stay up to date with Jason on Instagram at Jason Strauss. We'll be back again soon, but in the meantime, please rate, review, and subscribe. Tell your friends about On the Corner of Main Street, and of course, follow us on social. On Twitter and Instagram, it's @PlazaPod, and on Facebook, find us at Plaza Podcast. Or go right to the top and tweet Jonathan at Jonathan Jossel. We'll see you next time from right here on the corner of Main Street.